So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and to what will be the last Good vs Evil tournament game that will be covered on my channel, I think. There is another one that I could do, depending on a couple of things, but more than likely this will probably be the last one that I will be showing, and this one was actually given to me by J-Monster, although he wasn't in it either. This was just one that was sort of in the pool that was distributed to me so that I could show it, and this is going to be obviously the good side over here, and Dreezy is going to be playing as Linden, and over there we can see Sin of the Dark Cloud is going to be playing as Dol Amroth. This is of course the same map that the first game that I showed from this tournament was on, which is the sort of Mordor Wastes map with the trenches and the waves that go across the field, making advances a little bit more interesting than they would be on a map like Grassy Plain. And for the Evil team we have a combination of Kuro Guro-chan, who is going to be playing as Umbar, and then just across from him, his ally is going to be Numenor, played by Peak. So we'll go through the good side first of all, seeing as they are the ones that the replayers from the perspective of. And we'll start off with Dol Amroth. Obviously Dol Amroth seems to be pretty popular in the new patch, and for good reason. I feel as though the additions given to them make them substantially more useful. Now, you know, Dol Amroth always did feel a little bit lackluster in the previous patch, very one note. But now, especially with units like the Paradil, Randirim over here, they've had a few gaps in their roster closed, just overall made a little bit more, a little bit stronger, especially on horseback, which is where their primary focus is. There's obviously a couple of units of these horse archers, which will be very good for harassing. Could be useful against Numenor as well, with Numenor's lower numbers overall. And then over here we've got the Paradil Horse Guard as well, obviously very strong melee cavalry, stronger than the Mercs, but also more expensive, so you know, that is the sort of gain that Dol Amroth have. They've lost the Mercs, but these Horse Guard, obviously, they may be more expensive, they are also stronger, so we'll give Dol Amroth a big advantage in most cav-to-cav engagements. In fact, I think overall, any faction in the game, even Khan, would probably not enjoy going up against Dol Amroth in just a pure cav scrap. Now, it looks like also 2 units here of Knights of the Silver Swan, which is a big investment in Lancers, especially sort of not multiple HP Lancers, such as these guys. We'll see how well they can do. Obviously, Numenor in general have got quite a lot of pole arms and javelins that they can bring to bear. Corsairs. Umbar's army also has quite a few options when dealing with enemy cavalry, if Kuro has brought those options. But yeah, the Knights of the Silver Swan, as Lancers, obviously they look fantastic, and they are capable of doing a lot of damage, as all Lancers are. Looks like he's got a bit of a fortified position over here on this hill with a couple of units of Doran Ernil archers without the armour upgrade, but Dol Amroth's archer line is okay, but it's not as strong as their allies over in Gondor. And then over here, obviously, the combination of Doran Ernil pikemen and the Athelond men-at-arms here on the front line as well. Pretty standard. It's Dol Amroth's sort of primary go-to phalanx in most situations, because the pikemen obviously have a little bit more range. Actually, the Doran Ernil pikemen do have the armour upgrades as well. They have a little bit more range than the halberds, and you know, over here there was never really any chance of Dol Amroth winning an infantry quality fight with Numenor, I don't think, unless they really invested heavily in it, and it was always unlikely they were going to go without too much cavalry. And then obviously some Haven Guard back here as well. Obviously the Haven Guard, very, very strong, a unit which certainly can go toe-to-toe with a lot of Numenor's units. We'll see how well they can do in this battle. And then finally, for the good team, we have Linden, and we've got Dreezy over here. He's got some Mithlond Lancers over here on the side, and it looks as though they've been given back their old name, which is good from my perspective, so it means I don't have to try and say the name that they were given briefly in a previous build of 0.97. Some Mithlond Marines as well, so obviously Javelins for Linden is a big advantage that they have over the other elves. It's obviously probably the primary reason you would bring Linden. Linden in general are also capable of bringing a little bit more in terms of numbers than the other elves, so there's a little bit more margin for error with them, even if their armour values are very low. The Harlinden infantry as well, obviously. It's very difficult to sort of trade cost effectively with an elven front line without affecting the fight with some sort of outside method, like archers or perhaps other javelins, but obviously Linden are very good at keeping such things at arm's length. But the Harlinden infantry, it's not impossible to beat them, but you do need to invest in a bit of quality. Umbar can do so though, of course, as we've seen before. Harlinden Guard here on the front line as well, obviously not the base archer for Linden, they've got a shield value, they also double as spears in melee, which could make them a bit of a nightmare, because obviously you can put these guys out in front of your line and cavalry is unlikely to want to charge them unthinkingly. They still could, because obviously Linden's units are a little bit smaller and a charge can do substantial damage, but you know, it's still something that you're going to want to think carefully about, you know, whether it's worth sending your cavalry into an engagement like that. And he's gone for 2 units of them. At the front here we've got the Horse Lords of Ulmo, which is going to be the General's Bodyguard, of course, so a sort of Lance Knight unit. Very good in melee as well. They do lack a shield and don't have as much armour as quite a lot of other knights. In fact, I think they are the lightest armoured of all knights. but obviously as elves they make up for this in other ways. You really don't want to be caught up in melee with them for too long. And then back here we have the primary infantry line, a combination of Noldering Guard and Mithlond Pikemen. So Dresius certainly, as he usually does actually, has gone for a primarily quality focused army, so very small army, but all of these units are certainly no pushovers. So the Noldering Guard and the Mithlond Pikemen, an extremely powerful front line, as well as here in the middle we've got the Noldorin Swordmasters, previously of course the Blade Masters. They've been given the same unit model, it seems, as the Noldering Guard, which I think is good because I prefer this unit model honestly to what they had before. Nice swords as well. I think this probably means they've got slightly higher armor values than they had before as well, so honestly this might make them, this might be enough to push them above stuff like even the Temple Executioners noticeably now. We'll see. Over here on the flank again it's going to be Mithlond Marines, some more Harlinden infantry, and then some more Mithlond Lancers, so pretty well rounded, obviously a nice symmetrical army. Very high in terms of the quality. We'll see how well they can deal with Umbar's almost certainly larger army, and you can see here Umbar has spread out across the hill, blending into the terrain nicely over here. So we've got some Corsair archers here at the front, obviously seeming to be sort of a similar approach to the one I used when I played as Umbar on this very map, with regards to the skirmish line anyway, just going for sort of some cheap archers just to sort of try and occupy the Linden skirmishers and then try and win the battle in other ways. Got some Belagire archers here as well, so again, so fair amount of numbers here in terms of the skirmish line. It's going to make it difficult for Linden's skirmishers. We'll see how this goes. I mean, Linden's archers are pretty damn good, but I feel as though the infantry is where Linden are at their most dangerous here in this fight. We got some Corsair infantry with the armor upgrade. Now the armor upgrade is all well and good, it makes them a bit tougher, but ultimately they are still a unit which is going to be more similar to stuff like the Rudauer Swordsman in terms of quality, so they are really not going to stand too much of a chance against the Linden infantry today. But along with the Corsair pikemen just in behind them, it's very clear that this is just a front line designed to try and hold Linden at bay for as long as possible, and that is a lot of infantry that Linden are going to have to cut their way through. They will manage it without some sort of other unit to back these guys up, but it will take them a while with those pikes there as well. The Naruna Aru Sentinels here holding down the line in the middle, presumably to try and sort of keep the morale in check, boosting the morale. And then back here at the back we've got the Alcondras Legion, which this is the unit which can obviously beat the Harlinden infantry 1-to-1. But even so, they will struggle against stuff like Noldorin Guard and Noldorin Blade Masters. There's a lot of them though. We'll see, this could be interesting. This is obviously whether Linden can cut their way through quite so many of Umbar's units while still having to deal with a bit of quality as well. And there is of course the fact that these two teams will be able to support one another if needed, and Numenor are over here with their very high quality. We've got the Romana Marksmen out here in front. Obviously they double as very strong men-at-arms units as well as being good at range. Numenor, just like Linden actually, a lot of hybrid units which can be used to their advantage. Back here we've got the Romana Marines, which are pretty much the same thing. They are Javelin infantry hybrids, so very similar to the Mithlond Marines, only they have a little bit more armour. Yeah, this is going to be a difficult front line to sort of take head on, even for the likes of Dol Amros's cavalry. And then over here on the side we've got some Seafarers of Nindamos, which again are Spear Javelin hybrids, I believe. So this is a lot of Javelins that are going to be heading towards Dol Amroth. Some Numenorian Lancers obviously, so some Lance cavalry. I think they're going to be outnumbered though when it comes to the Lance fight with the Knights of the Silver Swan. Then we've got some Elonde nobles over here, or Eldalonde nobles I should say, and that's going to be where our Pharazon is. It's obviously very strong melee cavalry. Without the Haven Knights on the field actually, they probably will be the strongest melee cav unit on the field. You can see already that this is pretty much all of Numenor's army. You can see back here he's also got a full line of Romena Sentinels. It's possible that there's some hidden units from both Umbar and from Numenor, but we shall see. Without further ado, let's begin. This obviously is not going to be quite as long as the previous two fights, with it's only being a 2v2 and all. So the real question is, who is going to advance first? Because I get the feeling actually that neither one of these sides would be too eager to advance. You know, Numenor in general, obviously with a slightly smaller army, with more of an emphasis around ranged units it must be said, was probably hoping for Dol Amroth to come forward with cavalry and sort of try to sort of smash them to pieces with their smaller numbers and then sort of counter-attack them with all those javelins and archers. Dol Amroth on the other hand would probably not want to do that, seeing the army arrayed before them. Oh, actually we do have the Haven Knights and the Arathurium of Dol Amroth, so yeah, Dol Amroth's cavalry force is huge. I did think that Dol Amroth's army was a little bit small. So we've got both the Lance Knights and the Melee Knights for Dol Amroth, which is good to see. But yeah, their cavalry force is obviously very strong, which means Numenor is not really going to want to advance forward, because that cavalry can be a real pain on the advance, especially on a map like this where the advance can be a little bit more tricky. course got Linden as well, who Treasy usually is a little bit more aggressive, but I feel as though going into sort of such a numbers-centric Umbar army, especially seeing as Numenor are right there, he doesn't want to advance unless his ally advances, certainly, otherwise he will find himself double-teamed very quickly. So we shall see. It looks as though Dol Amroth are actually going to send all of their infantry over here, perhaps to support some sort of Linden advance. It looks as though Linden are going to start moving forward, and perhaps with the support of Dol Amroth's army following them in, which would be an interesting move, because Numenor would then have to shift over some resources to help out Umbar without a doubt, which it looks like they've already started to do with some Romana marksmen. But this, of course, I feel as though this map is probably going to come down to how savvy people are going to be using the cavalry here. So obviously, certainly the cavalry advantage is going to be in favour of the blue team, both Linden and especially Dol Amroth investing a lot in their cavalry. And really, Numenor have brought a couple of units of cavalry, but that's not going to be enough to stem the tide here. You can see here that Umbar now moving forward, trying to crest this first hill. You can see the Horse Lords of Ulmo sort of loitering with intent over there on the flank as both of these armies continue to move forward. You can see the difference in terms of numbers. Obviously, Umbar a sprawling army with many Corsairs. Numenor basically just have one flat line with all their Romani units because of how expensive they are. But as we saw in the last battle that I showed, Numenor's quality-focused approach can certainly pay heavy dividends. Especially seeing as Dol Amroth have not really invested a huge amount in their infantry, but this advance from the red team is going to lead to the blue team deciding to hold their position, which is honestly very similar to how the last battle on this map went that I showed. The good team are going to hold their ground here on the sort of ashy dunes, while the evil team try to move forward, potentially to try and overwhelm them. Oh, hello. Looks like the Belagair archers are able to shoot in, and unfortunately the cover of the hill not really going to work, because obviously the trajectory of the arrows means it's going to carry it right into the Horse Lords. This isn't going to kill any of them, they're obviously multiple HP, very tanky. But it is going to force them to retreat. Obviously they can't just stay there and take a full clip of ammunition from the Belagair archers. There's also the Mithlond Lancers out here on the flank as well. This I think is going to be the issue that the red team are going to have. They're going to move forward, sure, but they're going to have their flanks pressured so ruthlessly by this cavalry from Linden. Doesn't look as though Numenor are too eager to move into the clutches of Dol Amroth just yet. Although it does look as though Dol Amroth are thinking about doing a bit of harassment with their Peridil Randiran. They thought better of it in the end. Meanwhile, the Romana marksmen are coming over here, so actually it's going to be Numenor that are going to take the first few hits. Obviously with their armour and shields, they're going to stay alive much better than the Corsair archers, but you know, if you'd much rather the Corsair archers start to take casualties than the Romana marksmen, and they are out here all on their lonesome. A little bit too far ahead, actually. This could be sort of fertile grounds for a charge from the Horse Lords of Ulmo, and losing the Romana marksmen this early. You know, Numenor's units are very expensive. Any losses you take as Numenor are going to be very significant. And they are actually going to start shooting into the Horse Lords of Ulmo, but again, I don't think they're going to be able to kill them off quickly enough. You can see their silhouettes on the horizon there, looking a bit like the Magnificent 7, although in their case it's the Magnificent 129. But they are going to, you know, the Horse Lords of Ulmo are going to pull out, and I suppose that is because Umbar are now moving forward in force, and part of that is going to be Corsair pikes. And of course, while Numenor can't really afford too much in the way of losses, neither can Linden. Linden have gone for a very quality-focused approach, even for the elves. You know, usually from Linden you expect to see a lot of Forlinden pikemen and Harlinden infantry. It allows them to bring a fair amount of numbers to the field. But this time not so much. They've gone for a very quality-focused approach, which is going to be able to cut their way through all of these Corsairs in double quick time. So you do actually wonder where all of the damage is going to come from an Umbar perspective. But they do have a fair amount of archers. They do also have, perhaps, some hidden units. More Romana marksmen shifting over here. So it is going to be a battle between the Umbar and Linden area, which is going to see the first action. And I think that's because, you know, Numenor are not going to charge across here with the Dol Amroth cavalry. It's just not going to happen. And Dol Amroth are not going to charge unthinkingly into Numenor's lines either. Although they need to be careful here, because Numenor need to send all of their units, because it does look as though Numenor are sending all of their javelins over to help Umbar out. But if they do that, then that's just going to convince Sin to come forward and charge some of these sort of units of Romani marksmen and, well, not the seafarers, but the Ravenna marksmen here are in a little bit of danger of lagging behind. Meanwhile, a very ballsy charge here from the Horse Lords of Ulmo, getting right into the Balaguer archers, and they should be able to escape here. Decent amount of damage done there, but they're in real danger here because the Corsair pikemen are coming forward. Dreezy needs to get his cavalry out of there in double quick time. The Horse Lords of Ulmo are certainly not a unit you want to lose cheaply, and they are struggling to escape. All the while, they're also taking a ton of arrow fire. You can see as they're trying to escape, they're rubbing up against the pikes, and that could have gone smoother, I think. They did a fair amount of damage to the Balaguer archers. The Corsair pikes now also exposed to the Linden archers, but the Horse Lords of Ulmo, expensive unit. Was that worth it in the end? Hard to tell. It's a very well constructed Umbar line. Obviously it didn't work out too well for me last time, although I went for more quality on the front line, whereas Kuro's gone for more numbers with the Corsair infantry. Fewer ranged units as well. Here you can see, however, the Dol Amroth ranged cavalry, the Peridil Randirim, trying to harass the Numenorian units. Initially it looked like they were going for the Marines, but now they're going for the Sentinels, which is the better pick because obviously they are, without a shield, much easier to kill off. They also do not have the armour upgrade, whereas the Ravenna Marines do. And the Ravenna Marines, obviously, probably overall the more dangerous of the units because of their javelins. But overall, if you can just kill off any Numenor unit models, then that's going to be a good thing. The Ravenna marksmen now going to zone out the Dol Amroth cavalry. The Dol Amroth archers just about in range. Still a very slow burn so far, but I imagine when things get going in melee, it's going to be an absolute slaughter. Cavalry will also be able to have much more of an impact when everything is committed. The Ravenna marksmen just sort of slowly moving forward now as well, trying to get into a position where they can skirmish down the Linden ranks. If Linden do lose the skirmish fight noticeably as well, that could be pretty scary for them, honestly, because then they'll have to deal with having their lines wrapped around by a lot of these Corsairs. And that is going to be, I think, Kuro's best way of dealing with the Mithlond pikes. He's certainly not going to want to take this front line head on and sort of try and smash his way through it. Taking a few casualties there. It's only Corsair infantry though. Again, of all of the armies on the field, Umbar are going to be the ones that are going to be able to absorb casualties like this more easily. But you can see that Kuro is just sort of shifting his army around. There's actually Corsair Blackguards in there, which I'm a little bit surprised that the Linden archers are not trying to make a point of killing. Because javelins like that are going to be one of Umbar's ways of trying to circumvent all of that Linden quality. You can see that he's not too eager to sort of take that Linden line head on, so he's trying to sort of shift around a little bit. Again, he's pushing the Linden cavalry out even wider. More ranged pressure going there into the Horse Lords of Ulmo. Those Ravenna marksmen are getting really close to the Linden lines. I think maybe they're going to try and get into a position where they can start shooting the Mithlond pikemen. But that is, of course, just going to allow the Harlinden Guard to sort of shoot them down from point blank. The Ravenna marksmen are good, but 2 units of Harlinden Guard is probably a little bit much for them. Meanwhile, still the Peridil Randirim. This is probably honestly the most significant of the additions to Dol Amroth at the minute. You can see now Dol Amroth able to sort of roam around the map, very mobile with a unit of horse archers like this, sort of penning in the Numenorian forces. These Ravenna marksmen are also taking a bit of range fire from this side as well, from the Dor Eternal archers. In terms of overall quality, of course, Numenor should have the beating of Dol Amroth here, but the Ravenna marksmen are not actually firing back, which is kind of surprising. They should probably pick a target at this point and fire. You may as well, if you're just sort of sending them in to try and absorb arrow fire, which is kind of a weird choice in general. Ravenna marksmen also pulling back now as the Harlinden Guard convince them to retreat with their arrows. Still, the lengthy manoeuvring phase continues. You can see Umbar sort of trying to sort of shift out wide. The Corsair Blackguards, Iron Arrow Sentinels, the Corsair Archers. Dreezy's actually running out of map space to sort of retreat to the flank over here. At some point he's probably going to have to make a choice of whether to sort of park his cavalry behind the enemy lines or keep them in support of his own. Because this is the end of the map. The mountains on the edge there. Still more arrow fire being traded back and forth. Harlinden infantry taking a little bit of damage there from the Belagire archers. Again, skirmish fights are something which Linden can engage in numbers, but actually it looks as though they've got their swords out already. That's the Harlinden infantry, what am I talking about? I'm going mad. Thought they were the Harlinden Guard for a second then. But again, skirmish fights are something Linden can engage in numbers, but you know, their armour certainly doesn't help matters. You know, you certainly need to be careful when you go into a skirmish fight with Linden. You can make it work for you, but it's something that you need the right units to do. Umbar's starting to move. The Alcondras Legion on the front line is probably what's giving Linden pause. If it was just mostly Corsairs, I imagine Dreezy probably would have attacked already, actually. But the Alcondras Legion are a unit of significant quality, which combined with all of these numbers is probably a little bit scary for such a small Linden force. Meanwhile, you can see in the backfield there that the Peridil Randirum continuing sort of their tour of the map. And still, the Corsair archers are still sort of pursuing the Horse Lords of Ulmo, who have taken some not insignificant losses since the start of the battle. The Mithlond Lancers are also here. Harlinden infantry trying to get into position. You can see how scattered the Linden army is at this point, actually. And that is a lot of Umbar forces that are across the way. Yeah, more than half of this match so far has been sort of just back and forth manoeuvring, which does lead me to believe that there's going to be a period of utter bedlam at the end, which honestly probably speaks well for the chances of the blue team because of all of their quality. When things get involved in a big mess like that, the cavalry will probably also start to come into its own as the Peridil Randirum sort of starts to come into the backfields here. Perhaps trying to skirmish down the Corsair Blackguards, which would be a very worthwhile target indeed before they hide. Of course, when they start to hide, they cannot be actively targeted. They can still be hit, but they cannot be targeted. Linden again just sort of shimmying over to try and meet the Umbar advance as the Peridil Randirum continues, and I think they know where the Blackguards are and are sort of trying to hit them by proxy. It's not exactly the most organised look to the Umbar lines, but that's fine. Umbar are better in a mess than most. Of course, our archers getting into a position where they can shoot, as are the Belagire archers going after the Mithlond Marines. They do have a shield value though, so they'll be a little bit better off than a fair amount of other Linden forces, and I doubt they'll be able to kill off the entire unit, so Linden will still be able to have some javelins, even in the worst case scenario for them. Meanwhile, over on the other side here we can see that Numenor are starting to make their move. Where did the Dol Amroth Knights go to? They are back there. The Horse Guard, the Knights of the Silver Swan, all of that Dol Amroth cavalry is still loitering within 10. Those Seafarers of Nindamos are taking a huge amount of fire there from the Doran Ernil archers. Obviously this infantry force from Dol Amroth would be crushed by Numenor if they did come forward in high numbers. The problem that Numenor are going to have is their ability to sort of try and keep their flanks clear of all of this very dangerous Dol Amroth cavalry. And already actually this is going to turn out to be a bit of a problem for them, because the Knights of the Silver Swan are charging downhill into the Romena Marines. And the Romena Marines are not going to be able to get their javelins off. They lingered a little bit too close without the support of the pikes, and they are going to be able to shoot point blank into the Knights of the Silver Swan and do huge damage actually. That was a massive amount of damage coming towards the Knights of the Silver Swan, so ultimately that was actually worth it in the end probably. The Romena Marines managed to stand up to that charge decently. They still took some losses, but now the Knights of the Silver Swan are kind of stuck here. If they try and leave, they're just going to get pinned in the back by more javelins. So there you can see the quality of these Numenorian javelins laying waste to these Knights of the Silver Swan. This is a strong lance cavalry unit. They're not lance cavalry that has like a low amount of defence or anything. The Numenorian Lancers are coming across, but they're getting into Haven Knights. I mean, that is not a fight that Lancers want to take. The Pikes are here though. Meanwhile, I did notice over here that we'll go down to half speed actually while all of this is happening. The Arathirim of Dol Amroth now, obviously the Lance Knights coming down here, trying to do some damage to the Romena Marines. Now at this point the Romena Marines are starting to fall away pretty quickly. You can see that they are getting overwhelmed on the front line. A combination of these cavalry charges and a counter charge downhill from the Dol Amroth infantry is making life a little bit more difficult for Numenor, and of course this is really the only line that Numenor have. They don't have a reserve line because of all of their units costing so much. So they need to beat the Dol Amroth infantry here, and they need to beat them well. Now on this side they will, because they've got some pike support, but the guards of the Havens are also chasing the seafarers of Nindamos off. Speaking of which, these Romana marksmen are also getting charged by the Paradil Horse Guard, which they may be melee cavalry, but as we saw in the last map the last match on this map with Dol Amroth, the Paradil Horse Guard, you know, given sufficient time, they can still do a lot of damage to units. And, you know, the presence of the Haven Guard is what worries me here. Numenor need to win this infantry fight by a substantial margin, but the Haven Guard are not going to allow them to do that, surely. These pikes are trying to get in behind the enemy ranks. The Eldalonde nobles are getting into the Knights of the Silver Swan and finishing them off, although at this point the Knights of the Silver Swan are not the important thing. The Mithlon Lancers are coming across to support, and with this assault I think on the other side here Umbar needs to start moving in as well, because they don't have the time. I don't think Numenor are going to win that fight over there, which means Umbar cannot afford to be caught 2-1 against Linden and Dol Amroth, especially not when Dol Amroth have got all that cav. Mithlon Lancers are being chased off. The Paradil Randirim, I think at this point, are out of ammunition based on how close they are to the enemy ranks. They get into the Alcondras Legion, but that's probably not going to go too well for them. There's a big blob of Corsairs over here as they start to move forwards. Meanwhile, let's go and see how this is going. These pikes are starting to wrap around. The Haven Knights are coming over. Romana Sentinels trying to zone out the cav, but again, it's always difficult to try and chase down cav with pikes. Knights of the Silver Swan are in a little bit of trouble, but you can see over here that just through sheer weight of numbers, these units of Romana Marines that did take those initial charges from the Arathirim and the Knights of the Silver Swan ultimately now are being overwhelmed by the Dol Amroth infantry, which is not bad, it's just not of the high quality that Numenor's is usually. But over on this side, obviously Numenor, a big blob of them, are slowly but surely grinding their way through. The problem that they will have, though, is the fact that they are going to be surrounded by some Haven Guard. And there is also Dol Amroth cavalry. The Romana marksmen are still alive though, only 56 of them, but still. A nice downhill charge there from the Eldalonde nobles and our Pharazon riding with them. And you would imagine that that's probably going to start to make things look a little bit dicey over here. But are there pikes on this front line? There are a few. And the Eldalonde nobles could find themselves trapped between the Dol Amroth pikes and the Paradil Horse Guard, which is not what they really want. Guards of the Haven still doing their thing. Here in the backfield you can see the Numenorian Lancers, the Romana Marines. Romana Marines are still firing away, but they're probably going to get attacked by the Paradil Horse Guard. The Haven Knights tanking their way through the Romana Marksmen. The Numenorian Lancers thinking twice about charging into that fight. Let's go and see what's happening over here. And finally we do have the infantry engagement between Umbar and Linden. The Alcondras Legion moving forward, fighting off against the Harlinden infantry, a good matchup for Umbar that. They are going to receive a lot of support, obviously, from all of these Corsairs. The Mithlond Lancers are here. They could use their their javelins, I should say, on the Corsair pikemen and Corsair infantry, but that's not really the most high-profile target, which is probably why Kuro's parked them there, to try and coax Linden into using all their javelins on lower-quality troops. Harland infantry and Mithlond pikemen, all of the Noldorin units are just back here, which obviously not too tempting a proposition, I think, for Kuro to try and engage with. But the numbers here are a problem. You know, this one unit of Harland infantry is already shaken, actually, because of the sheer force that's coming at them. The Alcondras Legion with the quality, the Corsair infantry backing them up with a ton of numbers. So, you know, of course, the Corsair army making some progress. Over here, however, oof. The Haven Knights and the Paradil Horse Guard continuing to move as a twosome. And that's a difficult thing to take down. Even the Eldalonde nobles will probably not want to get into that. But you can see here that the Paradil Horse Guard are over here, trying to sort of back up this Dol Amroth front line. I don't know where the Eldalonde nobles actually went. But our Pharazon has not died yet, so they did not get destroyed. There they are. They are fighting against Mithlond Lancers, which in sustained melee is exactly what they want. They need to be careful of any javelins that are coming their way, though. You can see here some Romana Sentinels sort of trying to wrap up the flank, but over here still the numbers of Dol Amroth holding firm. There's still the support coming from the top of that hill as well, from the Doran Ernil archers into the sides of these pikemen over here, which is pretty significant thing. The Haven Guard over here in the back as well of these Númenórean units. That's still a lot of Númenórean infantry the Haven Guard are going to have to cut their way through. But even so, they're still going to do a pretty substantial amount of damage, and obviously then there's going to be the Dol Amroth cavalry to contend with as well. You can see the Ravenna marksmen in the backfield taking a charge from the Arathirim, which is going to be nasty. The Arathirim have got a very, very grisly charge on them, and the Ravenna marksmen, of course, don't have the backstop of those javelins that they could use. These Paradil Horse Guard are taking some pretty hefty beatings in the backfield, however, but they have managed to catch what's left of the Númenórean Lancers, and they will be enough to finish them off, which is obviously going to take away one of Númenor's more aggressive options that they could have used to try and get around the back and start charging into Dol Amroth's rear lines. But yeah, the Númenórean Lancers are going to break off at this point. The Haven Knights are still in pretty decent health. There's routing Ravenna marksmen. It's pretty difficult to rout Númenor. You can see here Sin has completed the surround. Even if that surround in part is manned by even just basic Dor and Ernal archers, which is still giving Númenor the advantage in this fight, they are still surrounded, they are bottled up, so they won't be able to go to the aid of anything else. They will just have to sort of stand and fight their way out of that situation. And Númenor over here, not looking so good for them. Meanwhile, the Umbar advance continues. There's now some Noldorin Guard fighting on the front line, which has reversed the fortunes somewhat on this. You can see over here the Noldorin Swordmasters are over here as well, which are arguably the unit of highest quality on the field from an infantry standpoint. Again, the Haven Guard are there as well, but yeah, Corsair infantry are obviously not going to be enough to defeat them. The Corsair pikes are a little bit more awkward, obviously, because they can try and keep the Noldorin at arm's length with the additional reach of pikes. But this is a sort of bit of an interesting front line, this. I mean, Umbar at this point, I think they probably need to try and flood forth. Try and surround a lot of these Linden forces that have committed themselves to the front line, because while the Alcondras Legion is strong, overall the quality is certainly in Linden's favour. And Umbar are going to need to try and use their numbers. There goes Ar-Pharazôn at the hands of the Paradil Horse Guard. Mithlon Marines getting into position. Naren Aru Sentinels charging, and Mithlon Lancers did charge into the Corsair Archers, but they're probably going to pay the ultimate price for this, because the Naren Aru Sentinels were in close proximity. They're already shaken, and with a pike unit of that quality so close, it's probably not going to go too well. Meanwhile, more Corsair pikemen moving forward in support of the Corsair infantry. They're already shaken though, and this is obviously going to be the problem with Umbar's army. It's very numerous, but a lot of them are of questionable quality. And almost certainly they will break, whereas Linden will hold firm for the entirety of the fight. Meanwhile, Númenor's still surrounded in this pocket over here. The Haven Guard, however, still resolutely fighting their way through. And obviously the Haven Guard still one of the finest infantry units in the game from a damage perspective, and they are certainly saving Dol Amroth's bacon in the melee fight here. But Dol Amroth are actually victorious over on this flank as well, which is a disaster for Númenor. They needed the infantry fight to go fully in their favour if they wanted to have any chance over on this flank. But as it turns out, more Dol Amroth infantry is going to be committed over here. Obviously more arrows from that archer unit up on the hill also flowing in. Again, it's going to be fairly limited in terms of the damage they're doing, but you can see now that Númenor's units are starting to think about routing. And obviously Númenor, doesn't need to be said that generally speaking their morale is pretty damn good. Here's the Ravenna Sentinels without the armour upgrade. Those Dor and Ernal pikemen just not going to bother engaging with them, and it could be that the Dor and Ernal archers are going to turn their ammunition on them. And at this point, with Númenor pretty much contained, and the Haven Guard slowly but surely munching through them, Dol Amroth's cavalry is now going to move over to this side of the battlefield and start dealing with the remnants of Númenor's skirmish force over on this side, and then presumably go to his allies' aid and try and destroy Umbar's advance. We'll go up to 1 speed now. Alcondras Legion being committed to the front line, which is making this an even fight, to be fair. But it's units like this, the Noldorin Swordmasters, which I'm not sure Umbar have really got any answer to. They've got Corsair Blackguards somewhere, I think. But without the Corsair Blackguard focusing down the Noldorin Swordmasters, I don't think Umbar are going to be able to slow them in any way. Still some Corsair Blackguards back there. They need to start moving forward and start to throw their javelins, I think. They definitely need to start doing some damage to Linden, although to be fair, those Balaguer archers firing right along the line of these Mithlon pikemen, which they certainly won't like. Linden's pikes are strong, but even worse at dealing with skirmish fire than most other pikes with their lack of armour. There's a lot of Umbar forces up here, and the Alcondras Legion sort of doing their best to prop up all of these lower tier Corsairs. The Blackguards are now moving into place. I think this is it. I think this is going to be make or break for the red team. Either the Blackguard is going to do the damage necessary to the Linden front line. Ooh, and there goes the Umbar General, the Naruna Aru Sentinels. I don't think that's Ar-Pharazôn anymore, because Numenor's General is Ar-Pharazôn, so I guess that is Castamir after all. And he is killed by the Noldoran Swordmasters. Here goes the Blackguards, and they are now focusing down the Noldoran Swordmasters, and suddenly they start dropping like flies. Javelins of decent quality are capable of doing a lot of damage very, very quickly, and even a unit like the Noldoran Swordmasters is not going to stand up well to the Blackguard fire at all. You can see over here the Peridil Randirim potentially trying to look for a gap to try and stop them from firing. The Belagair Archers sort of throwing themselves under the bus to sort of save the Blackguards. The Blackguards are also taking some counterfire from the Mithlond Marines, but you can see over in the background there that Dol Amroth's cavalry is on the way, which I'm not sure Umbar are going to survive this. The Horse Swords of Ulmo are still alive as well, and they're going to be able to recharge these sections of Umbar infantry. And while there may be pikes over here, trying to countercharge there with the Alcondras Legion, but the Horse Swords of Ulmo have got a very nasty charge indeed. I think this battle is getting away from the red team a little bit. Again, these Umbar skirmishers are doing a decent job to the Linden line. To be fair, actually, the centre of the Linden infantry force has crumbled. Those archers did some good damage there to the Mithlond pikes, and Umbar are now going to be able to try and wrap up the line. But I think here at the most inopportune time, the Dol Amroth cavalry is going to start to make its presence felt and come to the aid of his beleaguered ally. Mithlond lancers charging forwards, routing off the Belagair archers with the support of the Knights of the Silver Swan and the Haven Knights and the Arathirim. That is a nasty collection of cavalry, which I don't think Umbar is going to have any answer to that. Had it been a 1v1, I think the Umbar-Linden fight would have been very close indeed, actually. But as it is, I think with the aid of the Dol Amroth cavalry, that's going to be all they wrote. Of course, our Blackguards are now caught in melee a little bit. They're fighting. The Peridil Randirim are here. The Horse Swords of Ulmo getting a nice charge there. Obviously, a lot of them have died, so that has taken away a little bit of their effectiveness off the charge, a little bit of their mass. But the Blackguards are obviously going to be the primary target here for all of this cav. And actually, this is going to be the end of Numenor. Numenor's army, what's left of it, is routing, which obviously is going to mean that Dol Amroth are going to try and shift all their infantry over to this side of the field, although I'm not sure they're going to get here in time to get a piece of the action, to be honest with you. These Corsair archers shooting. Some of them shooting to the moon by the looks of where he's pointing his bow. Trying to shoot over this burnt tree. Here in the middle, Linden sort of trying to hold the line, and at this point Umbar have chased them a long way, and their morale is starting to suffer a little bit for it. Speaking of suffering morale, obviously the Haven Knights are over here. Peridil Horse Guard also loitering. Here come the Arathirim. This charge, you would imagine, is probably going to be enough to skewer the Blackguards. Good amount of damage there. Really do like the look of the new Dol Amroth units. The Arathirim in particular are particularly nice looking. Knights of the Silver Swan and the Haven Knights and the Horse Lords of Ulmo charging in here. Now the Naruna Aru Sentinels, I think, are a locked morale unit, so it takes an awful lot to break them. See the Doran Ernal archers wanting a piece of this action in melee. And there goes Imrahil. I mean, he did pay the price for charging into the Naruna Aru Sentinels. So the Dol Amroth general is dead, leaving just the one general, which is Linden's, which, considering the Horse Lords of Ulmo put themselves in harm's way very early on in the fight. Linden general's a lucky lad. Look at all of this, the Linden force are just swarming after this one unit of Alcondras Legion, and I think that's going to be just about it for Umbar. I don't believe the Alcondras Legion are locked morale. They could be, though. Obviously, Umbar at the higher tiers have got a fair few locked morale units, one of their sort of selling points. Balances out nicely with the more cowardly Corsairs, which obviously their breaking has cost Umbar a little bit here. And that's going to be just about it. So obviously this is going to be 2 solid points for the good team. Dol Amroth charging across the field. And that Dol Amroth cav force is nasty. It's difficult to fight against if you're ill prepared for it. Peridil Randirin. What is still fighting? Gotta be something. Ah, this unit of Alcondras Legion. Only 7 of them. There are Nolder and Guard over here, so unfortunately for them, even here, the Alcondras Legion not able to have a quality advantage, and obviously just squashed by the Dol Amroth cavalry unceremoniously. And I think that's going to be just about it. What are they going after? Little Lancers? Charging after something which presumably returned from routing from the Numenorian side? It's possible. I don't think so. What is left? What is this madness? I mean, the battle is over, naturally. A very solid victory here for the good team, and obviously this goes to show that you know, the red team had a very solid infantry advantage in this fight. You know, both Lyndon and Dol Amroth went for less infantry. Lyndon because they wanted higher quality infantry, Dol Amroth just because they wanted to invest a lot more in their cavalry. And ultimately that paid off for them. You know, obviously Umbar with their numbers, Numenor with their hybrids. It's not enough to turn this fight around. And over here we can see that the Numenorian Shadow Guard is alive. Presumably they forgot to be committed to the main fight, which is unfortunate because a unit of Rangers would have done much to help Numenor's chances in that infantry fight at wrapping them up more quickly. But as it is, you know, these things happen, especially when they blend into the terrain this well. Even if they weren't hidden, you would probably still miss them, to be fair. So obviously this is going to be the end. Numenorian Shadow Guard not going to last too long under sustained charging from all of these Lyndon and Dol Amroth cavalry units, and then they admit defeat. So that is going to be the end. Well played to the good team there. Both Lyndon and Dol Amroth working very nicely in tandem. Obviously very small armies as well, which, you know, just over 800 kills might not seem like much. But, you know, these armies only had 1,300 men each in them. So, I mean, 800 is still a decent portion of each army. But obviously Lyndon getting a lot of kills, but then that is also because Umbar brought by far and away the biggest army on the field with over 3,000 men deployed, whereas Dol Amroth obviously had to deal with Numenor, which, you know, for Numenor 2,000 is still a fairly large army, considering they didn't bring any of their sort of really strong melee units like obviously the Temple Executioners. Let's go see the statistics obviously of Sin's army then. And obviously the cavalry doing decently. The Knights of the Silver Swan though, they paid the price. I mean, didn't go too well for them on the initial charge. Those Ravenna Marines certainly made them pay dearly for daring to charge into them, but the rest of Sin's cavalry did very well. The Arathirim obviously were basically free to charge wherever as soon as the chaos set in, which was very good for them. But the unit that got the most kills were the Haven Guard, and obviously that comes down to the fact that they were one of the few units which could overpower the Numenorian infantry. And obviously they charged into the back, slowly but surely mulched their way through that section of Numenorian infantry that they had surrounded. And yeah, obviously a small Dol Amroth army here, but very focused around the cavalry. The Peridil Randirim obviously very good at harassing the enemy. The Horse Guard makes sure that in terms of a cav-to-cav engagement, you are going to be a very unappealing target with their usefulness in melee. Obviously the Haven Knights, everyone knows how strong and tanky the Haven Knights are, but yeah, overall the army compositions for both Lyndon and Dol Amroth worked out very well here against Umbar and Numenor, who, you know, Umbar and Numenor, as far as the evil factions go, obviously Numenor can go both ways. You know, they are both good and evil. But as far as the evil factions go, they are capable of dishing out quite a lot of quality themselves. And while Umbar did go a little bit more Corsair heavy, they still had stuff like Alcondras Legion and Blackguards, which certainly helped matters. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this battle. I'm sure that people will enjoy seeing another example of Dol Amroth being much more powerful in this patch, a lot more useful. And I would expect to see, with regards to 0.97 content, that Dol Amroth are going to be a lot more popular going forward. Because obviously they've got the looks, and now they've got the effectiveness as well on the field. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Keep your eye out on the for everyone else's channels like J Monsters, Gondorian Smith, Lucky Hussar, but also the official channel, which I believe is going to be sort of the capstone battle, which sort of rounded out the tournament, because by this point the tournament is finished and I know who won out of the good and evil. But obviously I'm not going to tell you that just yet. You'll have to join us on the official channel for that, so keep your eyes out for that. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next, which people did ask, just a sort of bit of housekeeping here at the end, people did ask whether I'm going to be doing faction overviews for 0.97 again. Yes and no. I think what I'm going to do instead is do faction updates, which will likely be shorter, just sort of going over a few sort of very general strengths and weaknesses of each faction, sort of, because I don't really want to just sort of repeat myself too much, but I feel as though faction update is useful because enough has changed to the point where it is probably worthwhile doing. So they will be, in a word, yes, I will be doing faction overviews again, but they will be shorter to just sort of account for the fact that, you know, sweeping changes haven't been made, but significant enough changes have been made that they will be mentioned. So that will probably be coming in the next week or so, as well as a few more battles from .97, I would hope. So yeah, I hope you'll join me for that.